Alaikum. With the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, praise be to Allah, the guardian, evolved, and sustainer of all the worlds. Forever ask Allah's choicest blessings upon Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, to the righteous companions that have gone before us. And we ask that Allah save our hearts from going back to sin and corruption. You know, it's a very basic thing in all of our lives regarding education. And just wanted to maybe share some comments or some points of interest that may change the way that we think about education. First thing I'm going to say is that education destroys. And I happened to be reading over a definition, well, not a definition, but I was looking for the origin of the word education one day, and I had bought a book some years ago at the University of Chicago Library by a guy named Joseph Shipley. And I looked up education, and it said, see, destroy. So I went to the word destroy, and it said to pile things up, the opposite of the common, which meant to scatter things around. So in scattering things around or piling them up until you break them down, this is what the so-called educational system is designed to do. But what are you scattering up? What are you breaking down? If Allah has given us a qadr, or divine destiny in our lives, each one of us, or every creature that He's created, He says in the Quran that He creates nothing without an aim and a purpose, and that He creates the substance and sustenance for our life. So therefore the substance and the aim is already contained within the individual human being. In Surah 16, verse 78 in the Quran, Allah says, "It is He who brought you forth from the wombs of your mothers when you knew nothing, and He gave you hearing and sight and intelligence and affection, that you may give thanks to Allah. Do they not look at the birds, held poised in the midst of the air and the sky? Nothing holds them up but the power of Allah. Verily in this are signs for those who believe." And when I read that verse, it really stood out in my mind, and it began to direct me towards child rearing and education. That if Allah gave you the faculties of hearing and sight and an intuitive nature, we watch a child from birth who knows nothing, that within 2 years he's able to give back to you intelligently the sounds of the environment that he was in. To be able to organize, categorize, and integrate abstract sound with your hearing, your sight, and your intuitive nature in less than 2 years is one of the most awesome learning experiences that any of us would ever have to achieve in life. And Allah causes the human creature to do this within 2 years. If I was to set out right now to try to learn any other language other than my first language, which I speak, is English, it would be very difficult for me, very burdensome. But a child comes into this within 2 years. So I thought about these things. Yeah. In regard to sending children to school. In schools, they design a curriculum. Here in the Philadelphia district schools, from K through 4 or from K through 12th grade, curriculum means to control. I want to continue to make the point in regard to education being destructive. Many years ago, they were focusing on all the problems that were existing in the Philadelphia public school system. And at the time, back in 95, 96, we had a superintendent named David Hornbeck. And one day he was at city council, and these are some of the comments that was made. David Hornbeck is, like everybody else, less than perfect. If you followed the unfolding grade school debate, you probably already knew that the superintendent's critics, including several of this newspaper, have chronicled every misstep, mistakenly defining him as the main problem. Wrong. The public schools don't work for too many of our children. People know the problem exists, but like the elephant in the parlor or the crazy uncle in the attic, they pretend it can be avoided. They come down on Hornbeck for bringing it up. For all the criticism he has endured, justified and otherwise, Hornbeck is undeniably a talented and committed educator. His mantra, quote, "all children can achieve at high levels," end quote, is both unremarkable and radical. Who else has had the heart to tell hard truths rather than accepting the status quo that has made a mess of the public education in Philadelphia? quote, and this is from David Hornbeck, the superintendent, while he's at a city council meeting. This city, and unfortunately every city in the country, kills off more than half of its children by consequence of the public schools the city provides. Hornbeck said in a recent meeting with the Daily News editors, in our case, roughly 60% of the kids entering 9th grade don't leave on time 4 years later. While those kids are not physically dead, make no mistake, then in terms of a lifetime and prospects, you can properly characterize them as the city having killed them off. Strong stuff. Too strong, clearly, for many members of City Council who joined President John Street in turning the school budget hearings into a public humiliation of the superintendent. Rather than a dialogue on the needs of children, Hornbeck got a serious whipping because 14 top aides live in the suburbs and because a child testified he needed a math book. So the school system is not designed for what we believe it is. The school system is designed and based on developing a curriculum and benchmarks to put something into our children. When God has given to our children everything that they need resourcefully and intrinsically within them. The school system, when I say it means it destroys, is because it's set up on an age-appropriate learning and a rote learning environment. Rote learning means to drill, memorize, and recite. That's what a curriculum is. We give your child information at 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and they give it back to us. That doesn't help the child in his personal self. Education, if we look at the word educe means to draw out, to lead out from that which is already there. If I gave you a seed, and I said this seed is a gift and future wealth. Well, in that seed we expect to find substance and sustenance, which the Creator has put into it. And in the Creator giving it substance and sustenance, its aim and its purpose of what it is destined to become provides it with the potential, the capability, and possibility to reach the destiny or to achieve the qadr, the divine destiny, the true self. It's already contained within it. So unlike just a seed in creation when we deal with our children, because we recognize that they're complete within themselves, and it's not for us to try to put something into them or to change or alter the nature in which Allah has created them, we need to guide, nurture, facilitate, and support the true self. Then they won't have to suffer from a lack of self-esteem. They can be competitive. But if you're not nurturing the true self of the child, then the child becomes frustrated and bored and disappointed. Okay? So that seed that I gave you became an apple tree. On that apple tree were many apples. And in every apple there were more seeds to plant more trees. Ar-Rahman is so infinite in his bounty and generosity and abundance, he's not going to give us a seed for a seed, or a tree for a tree, or an apple for an apple. His unfolding bounty is witnessed in his creation. Every child is like that seed. It has an unfolding bounty in it. It has a livelihood that was guaranteed it. So the seed is complete within itself, and the child is similar to that. So Allah wants us to look at the signs in creation. He says that in the creation of the heavens and the earth are instructing signs for you. So if a child can organize, categorize, and integrate abstract sounds within 2 years, they've achieved the most awesome learning experience that would ever be a challenge to them in their life. So when an educational system or process that's trying to put something in the child tells you that they're deficient, or that they're lacking something, or they need special education, that's not the fault of the child. That's not the child's problem. The child is being made to use its valuable faculties of hearing and sight and its intuitive nature for something that it may not have any interest in, instead of guiding, nurturing, facilitating, and supporting the true self of that child. You don't have to discipline a child if he's doing what he desires and wants to do in life. So these are some very important things that we need to think about in order to readjust ourselves, look at the whole educational system in the process. It's not something to get excited about because a parrot can mimic back the sound that he hears. If he hears you say open the door or answer the phone or get out, the parrot mimics back the sound. So if we're only training our children to be like parrots that mimic back something, then they still don't have an understanding of it. And it's still not addressing what is important to them. So an educational system or so-called environment for supporting our children's true self is to support their self-essential needs. That's the key. Education, as we understand it, the way it is set up, is to train a workforce. Cut that for a second. I came across a book, an author by the name of John Taylor Gatto, who was a New York school teacher who they almost destroyed because of his different way of approaching education. But his book is called The Underground History of American Education. And on page 36, it gives you 4 architects of modern forced schooling. In Pennsylvania, compulsory school age is when the parent decides, or by age 8. So there's a compelling of sending your child to the environment that has rote learning. It has specific information they want you to put into the child, because curriculum means to control. The 4 architects of modern forced schooling: Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller Sr., and Henry Ford. Let me just quote what Mr. Gatto has said in here. Forced schooling was the medicine to bring the whole continental population into conformity with these plans so it might be regarded as a human resource. Managed as a workforce, no more Benjamin Franklin's or Thomas Edison could be allowed. They set a bad example. One way to manage this transformation was to see to it that individuals were prevented from taking up their working lives until an advanced age, when the ardor of youth and its insufferable self-confidence had cooled. So this is what we do. We take our children out of their true self. They take this valuable human resource of our human lives so they could be managed as a workforce. And these architects of forced schooling, the very sophisticated way that they set this up is to enrich all of their enterprises, not to cater to the child's individual and self-essential needs, but to give it only what it needs to provide them with a continued workforce in their industry. So this is where we take our children, and as Muslims who can appreciate, there's what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ referred to as an inconspicuous shirk. Shirk meaning to associate a partner with Allah. If we look at our children and know that Allah has ordained and given to them the greatness within themselves, to associate a partner with Allah is an unforgivable sin. So to commit a shirk that is inconspicuous, meaning you're not aware of this, Prophet Muhammad described it, ﷺ, as being like a black ant on a black rock on a moonless night. So all of the years that we've been on this course of wrong and receiving an environment that is not truly Quran or Sunnah, it is not guided by the essence of what is right, what is just, what is fair, what is proper, our children have to suffer. And another key thing I may talk about the next time we get together is the evils and the horrors of homework.